If you want to live like you matter, ditch the pills, look great, and feel freaking amazing, you're in the right place. I'm Dr. Wendy Trubow.
And I'm Dr. Ed Levitan. Welcome to the Feel Freaking Amazing podcast,
where we empower you to live a vibrant and healthy life by optimizing your structural, chemical, emotional, social, and spiritual lives.
Hold on to your hats.
Talk to me about the environmental toxicants that you see associated with dementia, Alzheimer's, recognizing that you have another commitment, and this is a huge topic. I mean, we wrote a book on it. This is massive.
Right. Massive topic. So what I love about toxins is it's totally doable to get rid of them. It's really doable to identify them. And then once they're gone, you can kind of check that box, right? This isn't like, there's some forever kind of maintenance. Like we want you sweating, having a bowel movement every day, maybe a little bit of binders, some liver support that you could probably get through food like artichoke and beets and good, dandelion greens. But when we identify that there's high mercury or high glyphosate or high levels of mold toxicity, I'm like, okay, cool. We have a project. Let's do this. Let's get rid of it. And then let's see where you land, because this mercury, especially highly neurotoxic. Glyphosate it's called Roundup is glyphosate, and the active ingredient in Roundup is glyphosate. And it's in our non-organic foods, but it's also sprayed on sidewalks and
golf courses.
Yeah, we can be exposed to it in a lot of different ways, even if we're eating an organic diet. But glyphosate sounds like glycine, and that's because biochemically they're very similar. And so glycine is very active in the central nervous system, and it can help to calm the system, and it's very conserved. So it's used all over the central nervous system. And when we substitute glyphosate for glycine, things can go awry very quickly. The highest glyphosate levels I have seen in patients when I measure them are in people with active ALS, with Lou Gehrig's or very detrimental and torturous neurodegenerative disease, or autism, or severe dementia. And so I have seen anecdotally in my clinical practice that those high levels of glyphosate are associated with a lot of with severe disease processes.
I love glyphosate. Like this is one of the things I talk on. And as I prepared my presentation for these things I talk on, I almost had to stop periodically because it's so horrifying. But one of the coolest things about glyphosate is it's actually water soluble. So mercury is not water soluble. It's stored in your fat, your bones or organs. But glyphosate is also stored, but because it's so highly water soluble, if you stop filling the pump and improve your liver's ability to mobilize it, it'll come out of you pretty easily. That's the nicest thing, as long as you stop your exposure, which is the hardest part for people, because that's the food. Right. Unless you live on a golf course. My dad bought a house on a golf course, and I was like, oh, okay. You have a house on the 7th hole. All right. I'm not going to say anything because he already bought the house.
It's like, take your shoes off at the door. Don't track that stuff inside.
Yes. Definitely. And don't spray your own lawn. And, if you have a landscaper, don't let your landscaper spray your lawn. That's what I think a lot of people aren't thinking about is, what is your landscaper spraying to make your yard look so perfect?
Right. And what's happening in the HOA that you may or may not have control over.
Yes.
Right. So I think take your shoes off at the door. Don't track that stuff inside. Open doors and windows, because the solution to pollution is dilution, right? Like just get that fresh air flowing through. That's a Walter Crinian, bless his soul. And, just do your best, right? Like what we don't want to do is paralyze people with fear. We want everyone to feel empowered, that they can make good decisions to reduce that toxic burden. If you're not having a bowel movement every day, talk to a good functional medicine doctor and figure it out, because that is how, when we're hanging on to things, when we can't let that shit go, that starts to accumulate and starts to cause cellular dysfunction. So, and all of us have toxins in the system. Every cell eats and poops, right? Like we have to be able to get rid of the normal metabolic waste. But if we're not, and we're exposed to additional toxins from the environment, then these just start to accumulate and cause more and more dysfunction. And sometimes just getting rid of those, just reducing that burden is enough to help cognitive function, certainly. And so we talked about glyphosate, which again comes from food, parabens, PCBs. There's a lot of things that are in the water. So I am of the opinion, certainly in Southern California where I live, we just are kind of at the end of the river, and there's military bases, and upstream there's a lot of a big ag that has pesticides and herbicides and organophosphates and all of that are getting dumped into the rivers. And so that ends up in the groundwater, it ends up in the city water. And I just don't think that there is a filter that works well enough to get that out. And so what I have decided for Marama, the residential care facility that I started for seniors, and at my clinic where my patients drink the water, where my staff drink the water, where I drink the water, we get spring water delivered in glass. And so making sure that, this is kind of one of those depressing things. I'm like, I hope that my child has access to good, clean water when she grows up. We have access now. It's not always inexpensive, but I like the Mountain Valley spring water. It comes from Arkansas. It's bottled at the source. So it comes from above where those contaminants downstream can get into it. So instead of filtering, you're going to the source above where the contamination happens. And I do think for myself and my patients, I do think that is the best option these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's so poignant because I'm from Massachusetts. You and I are on the opposite coast, and I'm so happy that we have this relationship where we can play, even with across the time zones and the distance. But in 1989, Heather, in a Massachusetts study estimated that 1 in every 6 deaths was from water or air pollution. So it's pervasive. So I think what I want to say to the listeners is, if you're in a place where you can't necessarily get the water bottled, delivered, you do want to filter. Always make a better choice, right? And if you have to make one choice today, it is eliminate, don't use, stay away from water that comes in a plastic bottle, because the plastics get into the water. They're endocrine disruptors. Endocrine disruption not only impacts brain health, but hormone health, risk of cancer, risk of autoimmune disease. I mean, it's pervasive. So eliminate those single-use plastic water bottles, because it's not good for you. And it harms the environment, and whatever harms the environment ultimately will circle back to us. So we are really in a circle of this. Don't go it alone.
It's not a social journey until others join.
Share this with your friends.